All right, this is Sue Frederick, and this is our Lessons in Truth by Emilie Cady class for Unity of Phoenix Spiritual Center. So right now we're just going to close our eyes for a moment and breathe in and go to that quiet, secret place within, as Emilie Cady describes it, that place inside of ourselves where there is only God consciousness, where there is love, and where we all know that everything is happening for our highest good, and where we all understand that everything we need is already on its way to us, and also where we understand that we have soul agreements with all the important people in our lives to help us learn and grow. And so tonight we know that this group has come together on purpose to connect all of us in ways that will help and heal everyone. There will be somebody in this group who will say something very inspiring and uplifting for you to hear tonight, and you will say something that will really help another person. And that's how these groups come together by divine order. And we are grateful for this one. And so it is. All right, so I'm going to talk about Emilie Cady, and then we're going to start discussing some of her ideas. So back in 2017, I was starting to take classes to be a Unity minister, and the first class asks you to read this book, Lessons in Truth by Emilie Cady. And I have to say, like, I started it, and I was kind of like, oh, she uses some kind of old-fashioned Christian language. And then all of a sudden I would come across these chapters and points in it that would just blow me away because they were so aware and cosmic and expanded my awareness. So as we go through this book in the next 3 weeks, I want you to remember that Emilie Cady was writing this in the 1890s when New Age and New Thought was just beginning to blossom. Like, she was friends with Charles Fillmore, who were the founders of Unity, and Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, who were the founders of Unity, and other New Thought movements were just getting started then in the 1890s. It was quite an amazing time of thought expansion as far as spirituality goes. And they were changing the dogma with these books. In other words, theism, or believing that God was a man in the sky and he was angry and punishing, and all of that had been dominant for a very long time. And these New Thought writers like Emilie Cady, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore were coming along and saying, no, there's a different way to look at the Bible. There's a different way to understand God. And Emilie Cady met the Fillmores in a class they were taking by another New Age thinker. And it was about Emerson, right? And as they were getting to know each other, Emilie Cady said to Charles Fillmore, oh, I hear you have this magazine called Unity Magazine, and I've been writing some articles about New Thought, and I'm wondering if you would publish my article. And he really liked her article, which is the first chapter of this book, and he published it in Unity Magazine. And it really helped fuel the New Thought movement that Unity was a big part of. And so this book, Lessons in Truth, became the first book that Unity published as in their publishing. And it says the pub date was 1903, and it is still in print. And as a fellow author, I got to tell you, that is amazing because nowadays it's really hard to keep people reading your book and buying your book and keep your book in print. And she knocked it out of the park with this book. The other thing about Emilie Cady, again, just to honor her, she was a homeopathic physician. Now you got to think about this. This is the 1890s. Women were not honored, their place was in the home. And here she was, an educated homeopathic physician. And I've been taking homeopathic remedies for decades, and they're powerful, and they're all about energy shifting in the body. And so she had a practice of treating people with them, which is so cool. And she was writing and publishing, and really at the forefront of a mostly male dominated new thought movement. So those of us who love Emilie Cady, there are so many reasons why we do. And that story of her, about her, is one of them for me, because even today in modern times, us women know that it is still hard to be a pioneer in something as a woman. You still have to buck against the system and all sorts of stuff. So, we are calling in the spirit of Emilie Cady for this class, for her to grace us with her wisdom, with her knowledge. Before class, I was putting up a prayer saying, Emilie, help us understand your books and your writing in a very profound way that will really help all of us and heal all of us. Because everybody in this class has some pain or challenge that they're going through. I know a lot of the people here have been through devastating grief, and they are working their way through that. And I also know some other people are going through personal challenges with their families and loved ones being sick. So wherever you are in your journey, you will find parts in this book that will really help you light the fuel, and really bring your heart to the challenges that you're facing. And there are 12 chapters in here, and we only have 3 weeks that we're meeting. So what I want to do is cover 4 chapters a week. And the only way we can do that is if we really kind of focus in on really important themes in each chapter and discuss it with each other. And then maybe we'll do a Emilie Cady part 2 class after this one is over, and go more deeper. I mean, you can go into this book deeper as you want, and spend as long a time as you want on it. But on that note, I wanted to quickly just go to the chapter that blew my mind the most when I was reading this book for the first time. We're not on this chapter tonight, but it's called the 10th. It's the 10th chapter, and it's called Finding the Secret Place. No, I'm sorry. It's the 9th chapter, and it's called The Secret Place of Most High. And I'm just going to read to you. I was reading along in this book, and she's writing about all these things. And then she says, each of us has a secret place, a place of meeting between the Christ, and that means in Unity Talk, the Christ consciousness, at the center of your being and your own consciousness. This is a hidden place into which no outside person can either induct you or enter themselves. We must drop the idea that this place of realization of our divinity can be given to us by any other person. No one can come into it from the outside. I have always found that to be incredibly beautiful, to remember that you find your peace by turning inward to that secret place, not by going out to the world and asking people to help you or comfort you. And of course, that is all good. But if you have that daily practice of turning into that secret place of Most High that lives in all of our hearts, that's where we find our courage and our faith and our love. And in that secret place, we have the ability to navigate any challenge that comes our way. And I just offer that as a little token that you can put on your wall or your bulletin board that says, whenever I'm troubled, I will turn to my secret place of Most High, where I will be comforted. So in the first chapter, if we look at the first chapter, I just want to pull out a few principles here. The name of the chapter is Bondage or Liberty, Which? And to me, this is really about, what is our personal journeys from bondage to liberty, and how do we define that? And I was thinking about this a lot. We all grew up in a certain way of thinking and being in the world, and even a certain spiritual belief system we may have been raised in. And yet, as we've opened our hearts to learn more, to ask questions, to question every belief that was handed to us until we could find what resonated with us, that has been our journey from bondage to liberty. And also in other words, I've talked about it and called it our arc of learning for our soul. And each of us has a very different arc of learning. So for example, in my arc of learning, grief has been a big part of it, to move from angry and brokenhearted over losing people I love to move to a place where I understand the universe in a whole new way now that feeds my soul and allows me to be happy and productive here. So you could say that's been my journey from bondage to liberty. So I am going to break us into groups to talk about these principles. I'm just trying to see if I've covered everything here that I wanted to get us started with. Yeah. But also if anyone right now just wants to, who knows about Emilie, who cares about these ideas, if you just want to share what that means to you, that bondage to liberty journey, please unmute and jump in. Okay. I knew it would be Verl. I knew it would be Verl.
I'm going to ask Kate to jump in because Kate was telling me, she's been telling me for a few days, but I'm a slow learner, that you can listen to Emilie Cady on YouTube.
Oh.
And Kate, tell us about that experience of you doing that.
Yeah, Kate, where are you, babe?
You have to unmute.
Oh, okay. I'm unmuted, right?
Yeah. Oh, you look so beautiful tonight, Kate.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I found it very interesting. I love listening to her on YouTube. Well, it wasn't she who was reading, obviously, but it was a wonderful way for me to experience. And sometimes I would fall asleep, so then I would listen to it the next day, and I found it very rewarding, Sue. I really did, and I probably will continue. I got through, I think it was about 3 chapters.
That's
so
good.
But it's just when writing like this is so deep,
right,
and so intense, I like to hear it as well as see it.
And then you can absorb it, you can really just like sit with it and let it sink in. Is there anything you want to share about the journey from bondage to liberty?
No, but it's amazing because I heard that a number of times, because like I said, I'd start the chapter and I'd hear the bondage and I'd say, oh, okay. No, I'm sorry, I don't have anything to share on that, except that I just really thought this was a fantastic chapter.
Yeah. The other thing about it, the bondage, we can look at it as the way we may have believed in God growing up, a punishing God, that you and I were Catholic, Kate. So, I was going to hell by the time I was a teenager, according to the Catholics, And
then guilt, you have a lot of guilt you can haul around.
Right. So, so the bondage to liberty story of understanding God, moving from God as the man in the sky who punishes and is angry and quite personal with everybody, to God as a loving consciousness that runs the universe. That has been incredibly healing for me. And I know even that some of my grieving moms have found incredible healing in that understanding as well. Because it really takes them to a different understanding, no, God did not take your child, the way the traditional Christianity would put it. And so how can we look at that in a different way that's more expansive? Another thing in here that I love in chapter 1 is that she says, to forgive is to give to give some actual definite good in return for evil given. Oh my gosh, I'm going to read that again. To forgive is to give to give some actual definite good in return for evil given. I think that is one of the most beautiful ways I've ever heard forgiveness described, that you are giving good to something that maybe was not good. Any thoughts on that, anybody? So I think what we'll do is we'll break into some groups now. And we're gonna take 2 chapters to discuss in our breakout rooms. The first one, you can share your idea of what bondage to liberty means in your personal life. The second one is from the chapter 2, where she describes, and you have to again go back to 1890s. God was only understood as the man in the sky. And here she is writing in chapter 2, God is spirit. And she defines it as God is spirit, love, wisdom, intelligence, and power. Beautiful. So, and that there is nothing that happens to us that God is not a part of when we define God this way. And I just love that idea. So in chapter 2, your discussion question is, how do you define God, or do you define God? And that's your question number 2. Question number 1 is your journey from bondage to freedom. What does that mean to you? And number 2, how do you define God? And on that note, I'm going to break you guys up into some breakout rooms. This is so fun. And I'll get to go see everybody. 3, 4, 5, because we have 17 people. I think I'll go to 4. Okay. Yeah, that looks good. All righty. Go to your rooms and I'll jump in and visit everybody. Okay. Let's see. Let's start with 1.
Mickey, you're still muted. I'm sorry, Mindy.
Yeah, so everybody unmute and introduce yourselves first to everybody pretty quickly. And in your introduction, you can talk about what the bondage to freedom thing might mean to you, or jump to question chapter 2 about your definition of God. I'm just listening.
I'll go first. I'm Christy Majors. I'm in Charlottesville, Virginia. Bondage to freedom. I just want to read this quote. It says, "We have come to a place now where our search for truth must no longer be for the rewards. It must no longer be our seeking a creed to follow, but it must be our living a life." I would say the idea that God is within, and we find truth within ourselves. And when I realized that it wasn't somewhere outside, it wasn't these rules and regulations, that we're born knowing the truth, and we don't have to look outside ourselves for it.
That's so
I'd say that was
beautiful,
my freedom.
Christy. That's beautiful. Oh, you guys make me cry. Go ahead, Lorraine.
Hi, I'm Lorraine. I'm here in Phoenix, Arizona. And for me, I'll go with that too, the bondage to liberty. I think the thing that's resonated most with me was on page 5. And I'm just going to give a brief little quote. He is the spring of all joy, comfort, and power. And then I do know Reverend always talks about God in us. And so for me, that's been awakening, because I grew up in the Catholic Church as well. So God was always punishing. And I remember at a very young age feeling like God had my back, and I was always praying. And then things went wrong in my household as a kid, and I just didn't understand why God abandoned me. And so I bought into that punishing theory. And now this has just been so freeing, because I can free myself from that. And it's just brought me so much inner peace, knowing that it wasn't true, that I was, that child self that I believed in God and had that. And she talks about the child self too, right? It was just so powerful in my life, and I just turned my back on it, but it was just because I bought into what adults were teaching me. So it's been great to go back to that.
That is beautiful, Lorraine. I think I better go visit other groups, but you guys keep going because you're amazing.
learning. It's been, so that's my bondage experience.
I missed it. I'm sorry. So who's next?
Oh, I guess
can
I
help with
am.
it. Yeah.
Go-
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, well, on that same line, I grew up in a Baptist church when I was a child, and it was all about, hell and damnation. And, my father, who was just a wonderful, kind person, didn't go to church. So I questioned, I was terrified that my dad would go to hell because he didn't go to church. And that evolved, over time. It's just like, what about all of the people in the world who are not Christians? Are they going to hell too? And that kept evolving. And it's like, my God is a loving God. God would not do that. I think that for me is part of it. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
It's freeing,
Yeah.
very freeing to believe, change your belief in the God that you were taught about. We grew up that way.
Yeah. So who's next?
Well, I already spoke, but I'll repeat what I said.
Oh, good, because Gail, I love you more than anybody in the world, and I miss you so much. So
I know, I
please
miss you
talk
too.
for me.
I had briefly said, for me, the bondage is when I used to look through things, well, still do, but look through things through the human eyes from the ego. And having liberty now is the freedom to look at things through the divine lens, from the soul's point of view, from the soul's perspective. And it just totally changes everything.
Beautiful.
And it is so freeing.
Absolutely beautiful. Have you guys all gone now then for that question?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So talk about the next one of how do you define God? And also, did you introduce yourselves to each other?
No.
So please do that too. Okay. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Hey, so who's talking?
Becky.
Oh, I'm done. No. That was it on my part. Because I don't want to run out of time so you guys can do the second question.
Well, did everybody talk about the first question and I missed it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Kate, that's not fair. Kate, I get to hear what you said. Tell me what you said.
Oh, I just talked about, being Catholic from even before I was born, probably, and then my 7.5 years in the convent and such, and the toll that takes on you in the sense of the guilt and understanding God. And I remember when I was getting ready to make my first communion, vacuuming some stairs and trying to figure out this God concept and whatever. It was really hard.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't make sense. And then, as I searched and was able to find unity, it changed, from God not being up in the sky or whatever, but indeed right inside of me and with people and everything. It was just a huge difference.
That's so beautiful. I love you, Kate. Well, if you guys have all talked about the first question, so let's now all, and also introduce yourselves to each other if you haven't, and then also talk about the second one. How do you define God?
Oh.
And I will go to visit another room.
Well, when she asked that, the first thing that came to my mind was,
So
Hi,
I want to hear what you're saying. Oh, you guys only have, oh, you have 4. My Lisa's here.
Yes. I'm here. You just can't see me. But
Oh, Lisa, I miss you.
you just missed Crystal. I thought I had muted and I'm so sorry. It was so rude one of the ladies was talking and she was meowing away. And again, I apologize.
Not a problem. You might hear my dog before this is over.
So what is the theme of bondage to freedom for you guys in general, the summary?
Well, Jackie was just filling us in on her evolution.
Yeah. Well, I was just talking, Sue, about I was raised Catholic also, and started having some problems with love everybody except these specific groups of people, or
Right.
people who've done this, or and that kind of where it started for me, kind of like exploring, well, this, I was raised like that to believe all these things, but I don't think they're true. So I started kind of like looking at other religions a little bit, and just kind of, I don't know, I can't like pinpoint like a specific moment or a specific time in my life, but just, I would say since college, I've kind of been on this journey. And a lot of what Emilie writes in the book are things that I've already like read before and believe. And but there were certain things that hit home for me in those chapters. What was I'm like blanking out now. I didn't make any notes. I planned to read it a second time through and make notes, and that didn't happen. But bondage to liberty, I don't know, I guess it's the idea of, you're born, you follow these rules, and then you die and you go to heaven or you go to hell. And I kind of just the thought that I kind of don't think that that's the case. I think
Right,
that
your intuition knew better.
we evolve, and our soul moves on, and just that God is in us and God is in everything. And I don't know, I'm still on my journey of discovering.
That's beautiful, Jackie.
But
we're all still on our journey.
Yeah,
even though
that's
we,
right.
think we're there or almost there.
Well, my spiritual growth is continuous and constant. I have to say that. And I'm so grateful for it, because I thought I had it all figured out in my 20s. Oh, and then I had it all figured out in my 30s. Oh, then my 40s, it's like I just keep learning more and expanding more. And it makes life worth living to be constantly learning like that and exploring. Has Lisa talked about her journey on bondage to freedom?
I did. I talked about 10 years ago when I was first introduced, when I met you and your books, and how that really opened the door. And Jackie and I have in common that, we were raised Catholic, and learning that, it's so much more than just this dogma, and that God isn't this old man in the sky with white hair, and just a bigger, wider, fuller concept of who and what God is. And Sue, this book has echoes too of a book you asked me to read. Oh,
Eric Butterworth,
yes,
right?
Yes. And gosh,
maybe our next class could be Eric Butterworth. Yeah.
It took me forever to read it, but I read it from start to finish and loved that book. That book is life-changing. And I do believe that that's the concept that any religion doesn't want humans to know, because then they become too powerful. And the message of Jesus and the resurrection, and it was so lost through the millennium, and when you're Catholic, you're born a sinner, and you have this original sin. And if you don't get baptized, you don't get rid of it. And it's always the sinner, always the sinner.
Right.
And his message just got so turned upside down and backwards. And it's sad and it's pathetic. And even the role of women. And I feel so sorry for Pope Francis, because he's so trying to bring women forward.
Right.
And he'll, and it's just, it's a work in progress, but thankfully, we have these ideas and the courage to be able to just not to live outside of the dogma. And it's just like, okay, it's more than just, going to church every Sunday and not eating meat on Friday and going to confession. Those rules. And I know that every religion certainly has them. Certainly Jehovah. I used to work with a gal who was Jehovah's Witness, and I learned a lot about her beliefs. I've known people of all religions, and I'm fascinated by all of this. And so that's my journey.
Has everybody talked in this group about that question?
Well, we kind of were introducing ourselves
Okay,
and
good.
kind of talking about, talk about the question, but
And also, did you get a chance to talk about how you define God now?
love, pure love.
Beautiful, Pearl. All right. Well, I think I'll bring us all back because I want to go on to the next chapters, but I love everything I've been hearing and everything we're talking about. And I hope it inspires everybody and helps us all to feel closer to God as we define God. So I think I will close all the rooms. All right. Well, I was hearing some wonderful discussions in those rooms. The journey from bondage to freedom means so much to everybody because it is the journey that we travel here in our own different way. One of the things that someone said, and actually maybe I should call, if it's okay, I'd like to call on some people that I heard talk that I thought were really wise. Gail, I'll call on you, baby girl. You were talking about moving from the ego view to the soul's view. I feel like that really says what that journey is about. Do you want to talk about that, Gail? Just with the big.
Yeah. The for me, the bondage felt like looking at before my shattering, looking at everything through the human eyes from the ego's point of view. And that was very limiting. And after you have an awakening spiritually, you get that freedom because you start to look at things from the soul's point of view, from the divine lens. And it's a whole new way of thinking and seeing things. And it's very liberating, very freeing.
Beautifully said. And, for many of us, grief is the thing that gets us growing in that direction. I know it was for Gail and for other people here tonight, that grief broke us open in a way that really made us really search for what God is and why I'm here and where do my loved ones go. And that search is not easily answered. I mean, you have to really dig deep to find what resonates as true for you. And yet the search is the beautiful journey. It becomes what gives your life meaning and what fuels your ability to keep going, no matter what losses you have, no matter what challenges you face. And the truth is, everybody here on earth, I believe, is here on purpose just to learn and grow. That the only reason we come to the earth plane is to evolve our soul and help others evolve. And I believe that you can also see that Emilie Cady is saying that in her own way, that our journey here is from bondage to liberation. And that we have to live with a different sense of God, that we have to live with an ability to forgive, that we have to live with this bigger idea that we have a secret place inside of ourselves that we can go to connect to God consciousness, or we can call that the soul's lens or the soul's place or the soul view, which relieves the angst and the pain and the struggle and the suffering of the ego view. Because if we keep looking at this crazy world through our ego lens only, oh my God, there's no reason to be here after a while. It's just so flipping crazy here. I was saying, oh, this is a happier spring because there's not as much COVID. Oh yeah, but we're at war. It's like there's always going to be a challenge in the outer world, but we can always go to the inner secret place to find our peace and our love and our connection to God. Does anybody have a definition of God that they would like to share? Oh, come on. Oh, is it Gail?
I'll say something.
Okay.
I just have really come to understand God as all that is.
Mm.
I think that can be really trippy to think about. Of course, you want to say God is love, like that power of God is love, like the energy of love. But really, in my understanding of consciousness and, what is happening here and how this material world exists, is atoms that are vibrating as a consciousness that is God.
That is so beautiful, because even in this book, Emilie Cady says in chapter 1, she says, God is in everything that happens to you.
Yeah.
There are no second causes. She's saying exactly the same thing, that everything that is God. And everything, what I love about that too, is the thought that everything in us, even the things we think are bad or not good enough, is God. That's just such a powerful statement, a powerful idea. There was something else here. Maybe it's not in that chapter, but she mentions a mantra, and I'm just trying to find it, that says, God loves me. And I remember coming across that mantra and reading it. And she doesn't call it a mantra, but she just says, try saying God loves me over and over and over again. And I realized, we're all wounded from our previous definition or understanding of God, that God judges us was the primary idea for most religions. But to say, God loves me, even in my flaws, even in my weaknesses and my mistakes and all the things I struggle with, God loves me. That is the most healing, beautiful thing to repeat to yourself. And I was thinking how next week I have a week of testing for my ministry school, where every single day of the week I'm having to give a talk and be questioned by a panel for 5 days. And so I'm going to start every day saying to myself, God loves me. That's all I have to know. It's all I have to worry about. And that kind of lifts me above the critical voice, the ego voice, the I am not good enough voice. I love that so much. Chapter 2, we already talked about that. So in chapter 3, it's called Thinking. And she's talking a lot about what she calls the mortal mind. I love that name of the mind. I usually call it the monkey mind. Yeah, and she calls it the mortal mind. She calls it very, it's very distracting, and it gathers information from the outside world, and it has no way of knowing truth from falsehood. I love that, because our mind is what drives us crazy, because it's filling us with ideas or things to worry about that really have no basis in truth most of the time. They are mostly just the worry chatter of the mortal mind focused through the ego lens. And then she says, the spirit within you is divine mind. And in Unity, they talk a lot about divine mind, which is the mind of God consciousness. That is a completely different vibration. And I've always told people, if you're sitting around meditating and you get this really ugly fear thought run through, that's your monkey mind. But if you're meditating and you hear this beautiful idea come through you that really elevates your vibration, gives you a different way of looking at a situation, that's the divine mind that lives in all of us, the God consciousness. And that is beautiful, but we have to first quiet the chatter of the mortal mind. So in chapter 3, I was writing that, I covered it all, that the mortal mind has no way of knowing truth from falsehood. God within you is divine mind, and God loves me is the mantra. And that Emilie says we should be a fountain of love for others, or we become stagnant. That's so beautiful. I mean, I've always been like learning and teaching, that love is what comes in through us and then out to others, that we get it wrong when we think we're here to try to get love from others, that we really have to be that that portal, that channel of it, or we do become stagnant, we become closed up, and that can be called neurosis or any kind of mental illness, paranoia. But when we let that channel open wide and we realize that, yes, we have to be the fountain of unconditional love for others, that is a beautiful, beautiful thought. And she writes about that in here. So then in chapter 4, she talks about denials. And those of us at Unity, we know that denials don't mean that you deny the reality of a situation. So for example, if I say, my husband died, I'm not going to deny that happened. Yes, he died, but I deny the power of any idea that he no longer exists to have any power over me. In other words, I deny the negativity of looking at death as an ending, any power over me, because I affirm that life continues beyond the physical and that we can even experience that continuation of life. So when you think of a denial, it's a way of turning around a negative thought so that you can replace it with the more positive, affirming thought. And Unity is huge on denials and affirmations, and I think they're beautiful. And she writes about those in here. To declare a negative thing as untrue. She says, by denial, we mean declaring not to be true a thing that seems true. Negative appearances are directly opposed to the teachings of truth. Do not judge by appearances, but judge by right judgment. I would say this is one of the biggest problems of humankind is that we get misled by appearances. And she says, first, there is no evil. I mean, even that right there, if you go back to 1890s when she was writing this, the world truly believed in hell, and the world truly believed that there is evil and devils and all of that. And she was really, bucking the system to say there is simply absence of good, absence of light. And what that means is that all we have to do to transform it is to love on it or send light to it. And we transform anything that is evil or not good. That I remember stumbling across that decades ago in some other book I was reading and going, oh, right. Because when we decide something is evil, we go, ooh, I'm going to be afraid of that, or I'm going to hate that. And that just makes it bigger. But instead, if we love on it and send it love, then we turn on the light in the darkness, and the light always trumps the darkness. So in this chapter in denials, I want you all to talk. So your two things to talk about is in chapter 3, talking about your personal technique or any quotes in here you like to talk about is fine, but you can also talk about your personal way of quieting the mortal mind and getting in touch with your soul's view for chapter 3. And for chapter 4, is there a denial of something that you want to turn around? And if you have any trouble with that, I can also help you formulate those denials. So anyway, those are your two things to talk about, and I'll break you into new rooms. And also, if these are new people for you, which they should be, I think, let me get this right. Yeah. So in these new people, introduce yourself again. I think they're new. I hope I did it right. All right, there you go. Oh my gosh, I don't know if I did that right. Did I do this wrong? Are you guys all in the same group again?
Nope.
Oh,
No,
good.
You did it right. You did it right.
Okay, good. So since Verl and Toby are here and Christy and Mindy, I'm just going to let you guys go because I know you'll talk about cosmic things.
that what we are, cosmic beings?
That's right. But do you all understand the idea of denials? Do you think you kind of understand what that means, or do you need a little more explanation of it?
I need a little more explanation.
That's so funny. I was thinking of you just then when I said that, because I thought, so for example, Toby's son is struggling. We could say that we can't deny
Very much
that
so.
your son is struggling. That's just a truth. But what we can do is your denial can say, I deny the struggles of my son any power to take my happiness and peace away. Do you understand the difference in that, Toby? I deny the struggles of my son any power to take my happiness and peace away. And then you might want to follow that with an affirmation that says, and I affirm that my son is learning what he needs to learn and growing in the way he needs to grow. And so it is.
So one other thing I need some help with is that my husband, Steve, just sees him as the most evil, horrific, and just constantly says bad, horrific things about him, which hurts my heart.
Right.
And
right.
I'm trying to tell him, stop it. You know, he's just giving more power to this.
I think Steve probably needs to talk to a counselor about that, because Steve's a good guy. I know Steve. He's a wonderful man.
Right.
And I think he's just so upset by how hurt you are, Toby.
Yes, he's trying to protect me, but
right.
he's not. He's actually hurting me more
right.
by going on about this.
So I think if he had somebody to talk to about it, like a counselor, it might help him reframe it, you know, like, how is he supporting you through this? That's all he should be thinking about, is how can he support you through this really tough time?
I have a quick story that actually is because of you, Sue. My son was struggling. He was suicidal. All I did was worry about him. And we had a session, and you told me to just look at a picture of him and think of him happy, and give him love. And I have a picture on my wall of all of my boys, and I did that day.
Mm-hmm.
And my oldest son, we hadn't talked. He called me. My middle son, who was struggling, called me, and my youngest son called me, and he goes, Mom, I had the weirdest feeling today. And since I started doing that, and just sit and focus on your heart chakra, love, sending love to them, and not even thinking about the things that are going on, his life has changed.
Yeah. Oh, Mindy, thank you for telling us that story, because you see how the mortal mind, Toby, wants to just pull us down into the story, into the rabbit hole, you know, and we each have a challenge that we can just go down the rabbit hole with. But the only way to change that challenge, to lift it vibrationally, is to send it love. And with children, especially, we engage and we engage and we engage until the words do not make any difference anymore. And so that exercise Mindy was talking about is, you just close your eyes and you see your son at his absolute best, happiest moments. See him strong and healthy and happy and thriving, and just hold him in that view. See him smiling back at you saying, I'm doing good, Mom. And just hold it. And then you can release. And throughout the day, whenever you find yourself, going down the rabbit hole, worrying, which is all valid, because I know he's really in trouble, also try to lift up and really hold him for a few seconds, because what that does is energetically, it lifts him to a higher vibration. So he can begin to process what's happening in a better way.
So one last thing, he's been telling me that he sees his dad like sitting near him or by his hospital bed or whatever, who had passed 7 years ago. I understand, I believe he is seeing him, right?
Yeah, I'm sure he is. I'm sure his dad is trying to comfort him and help him.
Maybe help him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay.
And the more sensitive and on the edge we are, the more completely aware we are of the spirits from the divine realms, you know. I mean, for me, even
Trying
if I
to
get a
help him,
fever, yeah, like even if I just get a fever or a migraine, like the veil kind of disappears, you know, and spirits are sitting on my bed talking to me. So, you know, as long as he isn't afraid of that, as long as he can just really
No,
realize
it's
that
not.
dad is trying to help him, you know. Oh, there's an unassigned
Yeah.
person. I better go solve that problem. Oh, I don't know how that happened. Okay, you guys have fun. I got to go do this. All right.
Thank you, Sue.
Hi, I lost my internet connection, so I got kicked out of my room. I think I was in group 4.
Arizona. And, you know, found it, and it was really, really special. We lost somebody, Sue.
Yeah, we lost one of our crew.
No,
Yeah.
I'm trying to get her back in the room. She lost her internet connection. I'm trying to help her. And now I just lost her again. Let me try her again. Okay.
Yeah.
And this group is number 2, right?
I think
4.
it's at 4.
4. Okay, let me get you in. Let her get her in 4. There she is. I think she's here now, I hope. Yay, Lorraine, we got you, girl.
Yeah, you weren't mad or anything, were you, Lorraine? I mean, you just all of a sudden.
Rude. I'm so sorry.
No, it's not, no problem. I'm just sorry I didn't see it right away. All right, you guys keep going. I'd like to listen for a minute.
Jackie, can you repeat what you were saying?
Sure.
Please, I think she heard.
So I was saying about how do I quiet my mind? How do I stop the monkey mind? You know, through meditation when I can, but when I don't have time for that, you know, just kind of pausing and taking those like deep breaths really helps a lot. And then I was also saying, you know, the chapter about denials, it made me think. I had just done last week, it was a summit an online summit on tapping for 10 days. And I thought that kind of really reminded me a lot of the denial chapter, because you're starting with, even though I don't feel worthy, you know, I love and accept myself.
Yeah.
You move through it. So that kind of just resonated a little bit. Me as far as the denials chapter.
One of my favorite denials, Jackie, is I deny any self-doubt to have any power over me and how I show up in the world.
I love that.
Yeah, that one's a good one.
Yeah, that's a great one.
I deny self-doubt, any power over me and how I show up in the world. And then you can follow it with an affirmation and say, and I affirm that I am a powerful divine being who came here on purpose, and I am just doing what I came here to do. So it is.
Is there a place that we can look for these at? Like, I'm really recent to Unity, so it'd be great if I could find something like this, because I've been working so hard on, like I was telling you, just shut the monkey mind down. Like, and I usually tell my brain, you know what, that's enough. I'm done with you. You're not helping me. Go away.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I'm just trying to think of what a good book would be for that.
Well, for the quote you just gave us, couldn't you just email them?
Yeah, I can email some denials and affirmations to you guys. I'm also thinking Eric Butterworth's book has that in it too, denials and affirmations, but I'll find some sort resources for you. But just remember that the denial, like I was just in another room where one of the moms her son is going through a really horrible time and kind of suicidal. And she was doing this denial of, I deny my son's struggles any power to take away my peace and happiness. And she needed that because her whole 24 hours a day is in worry and fear about her son and trying to help him. And it's kind of ruining her marriage and everything. So denials help us to not give away our power to whatever challenge we're facing. You know, even if it's an illness, we can say, I deny this diagnosis any power to take away my happy life and my ability to enjoy my family, or however you want to frame it. And I affirm that my natural state is health and healing, and I reclaim it with every breath. So those quick little word tricks that we can do can really help us turn around the mortal mind and its crazy thinking, because boy, our minds are not friendly.
Sue, I think you need to do another book with denials and affirmations.
Oh, I would love that. Yes, I'll get right
on
on
that.
that. In fact, as soon as school is over,
Yeah,
I
you
am
don't have to do it
writing
next week.
100 books. What?
You don't have to do that next week, but you know, after.
Right.
I mean, like as soon as I get through next week, and as
Right.
soon as I hopefully finish this stuff up and get ordained, I'm supposed to get ordained in June. I hope, I pray, but I hope I will. And then I'm going to get back to writing, because I love writing and writing books, and I haven't done that. I've been in school writing papers, and I have so many books in me now that I want to write. But all right, you guys keep talking. I got to go see some other stuff. All right, keep going. Let's see.
That they'll help people that they don't know.
Right.
So humanity stepping forward, and the acts of heroism, you know, yeah. So there's the light shining through the darkness there.
So how are you guys doing with the ideas of denials? Need any help with that, or?
I think we're doing good.
We all got it.
Well,
Chatting
share with me what you've been talking about.
Well, I mentioned Louise Hay, and Tina knew all about her, and I was just giving examples of how a way you could get started, that you also introduced me to, Sue, so many years ago, and it does work, and doesn't have to be complicated. You know, like I deny so and so the power, and I affirm, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And write it down on a Post-it note, put it in the car, put it in your bedroom, on your desk, and practice them. And they're very powerful. And I don't think, it's good to talk about how as humans we don't recognize, we're always putting ourselves down, we don't even realize we're doing it. I can't do something, or
the mortal mind, our greatest enemy.
Yeah. We're pieces of God. We have to be like that. I think Wayne Dyer said this, what we came from. But of course, you don't learn that as a Catholic. You have to repent your whole life. You're tainted, and but it's not true.
Well, Emilie says this beautiful thing. I think she even says it in chapter 1, that we are heirs of God, which means we inherit godness in us.
Wow.
And I can't remember where that is, but here it is. Thank you, Emilie. She gave me the page. On page 5, she writes, okay, it is time for us to know that we are not children, we are heirs. Heirs to what? Heirs to all wisdom, so that we need not, through any lack of wisdom, make mistakes. We are heirs to all love, so that we need know no fear or envy or jealousy. We are heirs to all strength, all life, all power, all good. That is our natural state, our natural inheritance. I love that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful.
Any other things, or should we head back to the other room? Are you guys good? Has everybody talked?
We have, and Vicky was denying, and she didn't know it.
That's great. All right, well, I'll get us all back in the main room. It's been a real pleasure hearing everybody's ideas and thoughts. Love you guys. All right, So I hope that everybody is having as much fun with these topics and discussions as I am. They're like the juiciest metaphysical truths and metaphysical tools. So next week, we'll be covering chapter 5, affirmations, which kind of follows with the denials that we were working on tonight, and chapter 6, faith, and chapter 7, chemicalization. Oh, that is my favorite thing in chapter 7, you guys, where she talks about personality versus individuality. So I'm not going to give that away. You have to go read that, but that's going to be something we really talk about next week, because when I read that, her understanding of personality versus individuality, that meant so much to me. So I think you guys will all really enjoy that if you don't already know about that. And chapter 8, spiritual understanding. And I guess that's it for next week, chapter 5, 6, 7, 8. And again, I'll have some topics for discussion for all of us, but I just want to say everything I heard in all the rooms tonight was so inspiring. So this is your moment right now to ask questions or to share insights or whatever you want to do. I'm here. So go. Unmute.
So was Emilie Cady really, was she looked upon as a crazy woman because she was so enlightened and her age and the time?
Well, I'm sure she was looked at as a weirdo, but she was a homeopathic physician with her own practice and a writer and a big person in the New Thought movement. So I'm sure that, like the rest of us, she found her people and just sort of ignored, the thoughts and the ideas of the day. Just as we do. And honestly, Unity Church has been a haven for me for decades, because that's where I always find my people. And that's where I don't feel weird. Whereas in mainstream churches and Christianity and all that, my ideas are just so different that I find it hard to connect with people. But at Unity, I just feel like, yeah, we're all weird in our own beautiful way here. So any questions about denials? Because I know I was helping some of the rooms, formulate denials. If anybody has a problem they want to throw out right now, and I'll turn it into a denial and affirmation, go for it.
I was going to ask you in our group, if you could repeat the affirmation again that you gave.
Can you remind me what it was?
We were talking about visualizing with the heart chakra, visualizing the other person and them being happy. And
right. Well, this is a very powerful tool where, you have somebody in your life who's really troubling you. And it could be a spouse that you're divorcing. It could be a child that's in trouble. It could be a boss. It could be any number of people. And instead of going down the rabbit hole of worry and fear and all the things our mortal mind wants to do, if you can spend a moment just closing your eyes and seeing that person as their absolute best, most beautiful, loving, happy self. And you can see a vision of them just smiling back at you going, hey, I'm good, or hi, I love you, anything, just clearing that energy path between you, seeing them as their best self, seeing pure love flowing between you and peace. And just hold that vision, hold it, hold it, hold it, and then release. And if you can do that more than once during the day, because the other person energetically, this goes way beyond words. Like there's just a time where words can't help a problem relationship. And if you can do this, then energetically, you're lifting up the other person to their higher vibration. And from that place, that's where healing happens. And that's where they will lift vibrationally. You're holding them in a higher consciousness. And then don't be surprised if you hear from them in the next day or something and they go, wow, I was just thinking about you. And one of the people in that room was saying she had done it with her sons, and they all had called her and said, Mom, I had the strangest feeling. I need to connect with you. And she had been holding them in that vision. In fact, I need to go do that with my daughter because she hasn't called me in a while. I'm going to go.
You know, what's interesting about that too is once you do that, and then I tell everybody about it, and then they start doing it, and it just go, you know, it's like a chain reaction. And
that's so good.
I'm definitely going to try it out.
I tell everybody that story because it was so amazing. And my oldest son, we were kind of at odds, and we hadn't talked for a couple months.
Right.
And it was like instantly, within a half an hour, he called me.
That's so beautiful. You know, it reminds me back in the 80s, I was a journalist, and I worked for a magazine where I'd go and interview cancer doctors and stuff. And so the boss of this company had flown me to Atlanta, Georgia, where I was supposed to interview a cancer survivor, a kind of a celebrity cancer survivor. And we had negotiated all this stuff so that she would agree to do it. And I got all the way to Atlanta, got in this hotel, and she refused to do the interview. And my boss back in Boulder, Colorado was so angry, and she was all upset. And I was alone in this hotel room, and I was studying Course in Miracles at the time and involved in Unity. And I remember sitting down on my bed in my hotel room, and first I would hold her and see her going, all right, let's talk, you know, and just sort of changing her energy. And I'd hold that, and then I'd release it. And then I'd see my boss, and I'd see my boss just going, oh, it all worked out. You did a good job. And I just kept doing that. And I did it out of desperation because I was about to like really blow it in this job, you know? And so I just kept doing those two things. And by the end of the day, she agreed to see me. And that night we had dinner, and I got to do an interview, and my boss was happy when I got back. And I know it was just energetic stuff that made it happen. It wasn't words, like I wasn't talking to her, she wouldn't talk to us, but somehow energetically it shifted it. So remember that you have that tool.
We'll all be using it on you, on your class.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, next week when you come to class, you all, I will have been Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, giving talks for my final ELENA licensing and ordination testing to different panels and different talks to different groups, and being questioned and drilled. And by Thursday night, I'll only have one more to do the next day on Friday. So if you have a minute next week to see me being good and smart and answering their questions and giving a good talk, I'd appreciate it.
What times are you going to be doing that?
Oh, it's all different.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
every
all
day.
day, you want us to be sending love all day?
It starts, my first one is Monday afternoon. Second one is Tuesday afternoon. Well, good. I think I have mostly all afternoons. I do. Oh, well, I do. And then I have a Saturday morning one, but for the week, all my sessions are in the afternoon. So just in the afternoon, if you think of me, I'd appreciate it. And
Yep.
I will
That's
be
good.
sending love to all of you because I love your energy. I love everything you've shared in here tonight. And I love it that Emilie Cady has shown up to help us really learn from her book and talk about her life. And again, honoring a strong, independent woman who believed in her truth, even though it was bucking the way God was understood at the time, and that there were, I can hardly even think of many other women who were leaders in the New Thought movement. I know there was another one, but I can't even remember her name, but it was mostly men leading the New Thought movement as usual. And here was Emilie Cady, this homeopathic physician, writing all of this amazing stuff here and really influencing Unity Church. You know, Charles and Myrtle were her friends, and they were publishing her writing. And that brought us to Unity Church, where most of you all know me from. So thank you, Emilie Cady. And this week, if any of you, when you're reading and doing your homework, if you have questions from what you're reading, just write it down so that you can remember to bring it to class to talk about it or ask about it next week. And personally, I just want to say thank you. I love you all so much, and I miss you all so much. I can't even tell you. I get to see Kate and Verl now back in church. Oh, and Kate and Verl, I'll be at the 9 o'clock service just because I got to get home and study and everything. So,
Can we all wave at the baby, the little baby?
Yeah, what's the
oh,
baby's
show
name?
us the baby, Gina.
What's the baby's name?
Hi, yeah, this is he's almost 3 months. His name is Vigo Sol.
He's beautiful.
And it's past his bedtime, and I'm kind of amazed he's still awake right now. So
God, he's so beautiful.
You're blessed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. I'll do a quick pray out here.
Okay.
We step into the gratitude of knowing that all hearts are connected in this group, that we have all helped and uplifted each other tonight, and that Emilie Cady is smiling at us from the divine realms going, that's good, girls, you guys are doing great. And she's happy with us, and that we are all going to get through our week with more juice and more magic, thanks to Emilie Cady. And so it is. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Love you and miss you all,
Everybody.
especially my Gail and so many of you I don't get to hardly see anymore.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everybody.